When a US president mentions Nigeria and military action in the same breath, it is never casual talk. Donald Trump recently raised the possibility of US military strikes connected to ongoing religious and extremist violence in Nigeria. He did not mention an attack and he did not name a date, but the message was clear. Washington is paying close attention, and it is no longer treating the violence as a distant problem. That immediately raises uncomfortable questions. Why Nigeria? Why now? And who exactly will feel the impact if the US ever acted? Nigeria is Africa's most populous country, and what happens there rarely stays there. Years of attacks by extremist groups, mass kidnappings and killings of civilians have kept the country on international security watch lists. For the United States, this is not just about headlines, it is about preventing violent groups from growing stronger and more connected. Trump's statement functioned as a warning to armed groups that the situation is being monitored, and a warning that continued violence can attract consequences beyond Nigeria's borders. To understand why the US keeps cycling back to Nigeria, we need to be clear about who the violence is coming from. In the northeast, groups like Boko Haram and its offshoot, ISWAP, have waged a brutal insurgency for years. They have attacked villages, targeted civilians, and challenged state authority. These are not just Nigerian security problems. They are groups officially listed by the United States as terrorist organizations. In the northwest and parts of north-central Nigeria, heavily armed bandit groups operate differently but cause similar damage. They raid communities, kidnap for ransom, and move across vast territories where state security is weak. While many of these gangs are criminal rather than ideological, their scale of violence has drawn increasing international attention. From Washington's perspective, the concern is escalation. When violent groups expand, link up across borders, or destabilize large regions, they stop being local. That is usually the point where global powers start paying closer attention. This is the backdrop to Trump's remark. The focus is not Nigeria as a nation, it is the persistence of violent actors, and the fear that, left unchecked, they could grow into something much harder to contain. For terrorists and bandits, statements like this are not empty talk, they change behavior. Armed groups pay close attention to US signals. They know that American military involvement rarely means large troop deployments. It usually means intelligence gathering, surveillance, and highly targeted strikes aimed at leaders, camps, or supply routes. That alone creates fear and uncertainty inside these groups. For extremist groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP, the risk is obvious. Leadership structures become exposed, their safe zones become unsafe, communication and movement becomes harder. Even rumors of foreign targeting can disrupt their operations. Bandit groups face a different problem: visibility. Many of them operate by blending into remote terrain and exploiting weak state presence. Once international focus increases, that cover begins to disappear. Criminal violence starts to look like a regional security threat, and that attracts pressure. This is why warning matters. They are designed to force armed groups to ask hard questions. Are we being watched? Are our leaders exposed? Is the cost of continuing worth it? Sometimes the threat alone is enough to shift their calculations without a single strike ever happening. For Nigeria, the situation is delicate. Foreign military involvement is not simple. Strikes by the US, even if targeted, raise questions of sovereignty, civil safety, and political optics. That is why Nigeria has historically preferred cooperation behind the scenes, such as intelligence sharing and joint operations, rather than open unilateral strikes on its soil. They signal to armed groups that international attention is focused, and they remind Nigeria's authority that global eyes are on the conflict. It puts pressures on both sides, violent actors and state forces, to rethink their strategies before the situation escalates. The critical questions now are clear. Will extremist groups continue unchecked, or will these warnings force them to change? Can Nigeria leverage international support effectively without creating dependency or domestic tension? And for the armed groups, are the days of unchecked raids over? For terrorists and bandits, the message is unmistakable. They are being watched, and continued attacks carry consequences beyond Nigeria's borders. How they respond could shape the next chapter of security across the region, and the world is watching closely.